The truth remains with us, yet it does not reside within books in any significant measure. Instead, it has been passed down from lip to ear. When committed to writing, its meaning was concealed in the language of alchemy and astrology, ensuring that only those who possess the key can truly decipher it. This is a piece from the Kabbalion written by the three initiates. And with that, our journey begins. The Secret Rite Scroll, an artifact found within the Shadow Keep, reveals the ritual necessary to attain godhood. According to its cryptic text, two essential entities are required for the return of a god: a Lord's soul and a vessel to contain the Lord's soul. This is precisely how Miquella fulfilled the requirement by crafting a vessel from Mohg's body, which in turn became the receptacle for Radahn's soul. However, the scroll warns that only a few can decipher its content, a warning I initially dismissed. Sir Ansbach explicitly tells us who the vessel is, and at the gate of divinity, we learn the identity of the soul's source. I assumed this information was straightforward, but perhaps I was mistaken, underestimating the depth of the scroll's cryptic nature. To fully understand the significance of the Secret Rite Scroll, I had to consider ideas that challenged, if not outright contradicted, what I had learned through my religious upbringing. Only then did I begin to grasp the deeper implications of the ritual described in the Secret Rite Scroll. And so, if you find yourself challenged by what follows, I understand. The reference to the three entities, a vessel, a Lord's soul, and a God, immediately brought to mind the concept of the Holy Trinity in Christian faith. What surprised me even more was the presence of Christian iconography throughout the land of shadow. For instance, there is a statue displaying the benediction hand gesture in Belurat and Enialim. Scum Mage Infa has created a thought-provoking video analyzing the meanings behind various hand gestures in the game. If you enjoy deep dives into Elden Ring lore, I highly recommend checking out his content. Another statue holds what appears to be a key, reminiscent of depictions of Saint Peter, a disciple of Jesus Christ, often shown holding two keys, one gold and one silver, symbolizing his authority over heaven and earth. This imagery originates from Matthew 16:19, where Jesus tells Peter, "I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosened in heaven." Additionally, there is a giant horned figure in Shadowkeep, positioned in a way that resembles crucifixion, much like depictions of Jesus Christ on the cross. These details don't seem coincidental, which led me to explore the concept of Holy Trinity as understood in Christian traditions. Many Christian denominations, including Roman Catholicism, Eastern Orthodoxy, Protestantism, Evangelical Christianity, and Pentecostalism, believe that Jesus Christ is God incarnate. According to the Bible's creation narrative, God formed the world and all living beings. However, humanity, represented by Adam and Eve, fell into sin, creating a rift between God and his creation. To restore this connection, God returned to earth through Jesus Christ, his Son. Interestingly, the Secret Rite scroll also speaks of the return of a God. In Christian belief, Jesus' ascension to godhood was marked by suffering and affliction, which the Catholic Church remembers through a practice known as the Stations of the Cross. This brings to mind Miquella's crosses, where Miquella undergoes painful self-divestment, as described by the Hunsent NPC. It is intriguing that there are 13 Miquella crosses in the Land of Shadow, though I am open to correction. While Catholic tradition recognizes 14 stations of the cross, it is as if Miyazaki took inspiration from Christian themes. All these connections led me to reconsider different interpretations of God's incarnation as Jesus. Some scholars argue that Jesus' divine transformation can be understood as an alchemical allegory. Proponents of this idea claim that creating a vessel for Jesus, the divine incarnate, mirrors the process of crafting the Philosopher's stone. Initially, I was skeptical, but as I continued connecting the dots, particularly regarding Radahn, I found compelling evidence suggesting that Radahn was in fact a Philosopher's stone, brought into existence through Miquella's carefully orchestrated plan. I am not an expert on alchemical concepts, so I hope you will forgive me if my explanations seem a bit surface level. We have been throwing around quite a few terms, so let's take a step back and define them clearly. Alchemy traces its origin to ancient civilizations, blending philosophy, mysticism, and early scientific exploration. It first developed in Greco-Roman Egypt during the first centuries AD, where practitioners sought to refine and transform materials. Their ambitions range from transmuting base metals into gold to crafting an elixir of immortality and developing universal cures. As alchemy spread across China, India, the Islamic world, and Europe, it adopted to diverse cultural influences. Islamic and European alchemists helped refine laboratory methods and theoretical frameworks, some of which laid the foundation for modern-day chemistry. The Philosopher's Stone is an alchemical material believed to be created through 3 or 4 transformative stages. This process involves altering a substance, particularly metal, into another form, often symbolizing spiritual or material perfection. Some interpretations extend beyond physical transformation, linking the Philosopher's Stone to psychology. The Swiss psychologist Carl Jung pioneered this idea, believing that the alchemical transformation of the Philosopher's Stone reflects the transformation of the body, soul and spirit into higher state of consciousness. It is said that the Philosopher's Stone grants its creator several extraordinary abilities, including the power to refine any metal into pure gold, craft an elixir of life, and even commune with higher beings such as angels. While we will explore the creation of the Philosopher's Stone in detail later, for now, let's establish the presence of alchemical activities in the game. To do this, we must first identify the alchemist, the individual who practices alchemy, because without an alchemist, there will be no alchemical processes. A good starting point is examining the perfumers, whose original work involved creating aromatics with medicinal properties. The item description for the perfumer's robe describes them as masters of the apothecarial arts. A person engaged in apothecarial arts is known as an apothecary. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, an apothecary is one who prepares and sells drugs or compounds for medicinal purposes. Notice that apothecaries, much like perfumers, create compounds and drugs, making them similar to chemists or modern-day pharmacists. Historical research revealed a strong connection between pharmacy and alchemy, with some arguing that pharmacists practice a form of alchemy. By extension, this suggests that the perfumers are indeed alchemists. Even the pattern on the corpse seated on a hanging throne in Lindell, the royal capital, where we obtain the Golden Order Principia, bears a resemblance to designs found on perfumer robes. This could indicate that Golden Order fundamentalism is associated with alchemy, especially considering that the Golden Order fundamentalism sigil comprises circles and triangles, geometric shapes frequently used in alchemical symbolism. Let's set aside the perfumers for now and turn our attention to the women of Nokron. What exactly is going on with all the silver tier mimics? Silver is an important alchemical material or metal, and its symbol, a crescent moon, reflects purification and transformation. Given this, it is not surprising that the women of Nokron and Nokstella hold the moon in reverence. But the most striking aspect of their craft is that they created artificial life from silver. It is believed that their ultimate goal was to create their own lord, much like Miquella did. This suggests that the women of Nokron were practicing alchemy, perhaps attempting to create their own version of the Philosopher's Stone, only to fail in the process. We'll revisit the lords crafted by Nokron and Nokstella later. Some structures in Nokron feature unique display of key alchemical materials, such as sulfur, mercury, silver, and gold. These elements are particularly visible on the walls of the buildings around the crypt chair occupied by the giant skeleton in Nokron, reinforcing the idea that alchemical practices were active at least in Nokron. These details serve as breadcrumbs, evidence of hidden alchemical themes woven into the game's world. Since we have reason to believe alchemy plays a role in Elden Ring, we can confidently explore the theory that Prime Consort Radahn was the product of an alchemical process. As mentioned earlier, the path to creating the Philosopher's Stone consists of either 4 or 3 key stages. The Nigredo, blackness, represents decay and spiritual death, the initial breakdown of material. Albedo, whiteness, signifies purification and enlightenment, where the material undergoes refinement. Citrinitas, yellowness, symbolizes awakening, although some alchemists merge this stage with the albedo stage. Rubedo, redness, the final stage, represents integration, completion, and renewal. This is where the alchemist synthesizes wisdom into a perfected state, a process that often requires years of deep refinement. Symbols of the rubedo stage include blood, a phoenix, a rose, a crowned king, perhaps consort, or a figure in red garment, just as we see in Prime Consort Radahn and General Radahn. The creation of the Philosopher's Stone actually begins with the acquisition of the base material, which is one of the 3 primes or one of the prime materia, the raw substance that undergoes transformation. Some alchemists argue that salt or the body serves as the base material. Interestingly, the alchemical symbol for salt closely resembles Morgoth's Great Rune. Mohg's rune should have been identical to Morgoth's, but the influence of the Formless Mother altered it. Still, Mohg's rune retains a strong similarity to the alchemical symbol for salt, which may be intentional. The introduction of blood into Mohg's rune likely serves a purposeful alchemical function, signifying a fertilized base material, a living vessel, as blood is equated with life itself. This suggests that Miquella identified Mohg as the base material at an early stage, just as he did with Radahn. Once the base material is secured, the alchemist can begin the magnum opus, or the great work, leading to the creation of the Philosopher's Stone. Radahn's transformation into a Philosopher's Stone began with his battle against Millennia in Caelid. The first step in the process of creating the Philosopher's Stone, as we mentioned earlier, is the Nigredo stage, or the blackening stage, which requires a solvent to break down and dissolve the element or material undergoing transformation. Some alchemists suggest that Nigredo represents an eclipse, symbolizing the union of opposites, particularly the sun and the moon, or feminine energy. There may be actual evidence of an eclipse occurring in Radahn's transformation. Our player character must obtain both halves of the Dactyl's medallion, which connects Raya Lucaria to the Altus Plateau. Interestingly, activating the Dactyl's medallion at the Grand Lift and resting at a site of grace in Altus Plateau triggers the Radahn Festival, granting access to the Redmane Castle. Raya Lucaria is home to the moon-aligned individuals, whereas Altus Plateau, in my view, represents the sun folk. The golden leaves and radiant hues of Altus Plateau reinforces this connection. Thus, the union of Raya Lucaria and Altus Plateau through the Doctor's Medallion could symbolize an eclipse, aligning moon and sun. Perhaps explaining Jaren's remark upon announcing the Radahn festival, stating that the stars have aligned.
Champions, welcome! The stars have aligned! The festival is nigh!
This alignment could metaphorically mark the Negrido phase in Radahn's alchemical transformation. Returning to Radahn and Melania's battle, Melania, as we know, is the goddess of wrath. Her wrath acts as the solvent or acid necessary to initiate Radahn's decay and decomposition of his former body of flesh, an essential step in Negrido. In my view, this was the true purpose of their battle, not simply a struggle for power, but a deliberate process to introduce Melania's wrath into Radahn, allowing his Negrido phase to commence. This explains why Radahn's flesh appears black when the player encounters him in Caelid. The next step in the process is albedo, whitening, and or citrinitas, yellowing. It's possible that the albedo had already occurred before our player character arrives at the gate of divinity. Or perhaps Miquella bypassed the albedo altogether, moving directly into citrinitas and rubedo. The yellowing stage, citrinitas, represents awakening, precisely what happens when Miquella proclaims, "Lord brother, at long last, you are returned." This marks Radahn's reawakening, the step before achieving true transformation. The game visually conveys this moment. Just before Miquella's proclamation, Radahn's body is engulfed in golden yellow hue, which aligns with citrinitas. Soon after, this yellow hue deepens a red tone, signifying the final rubedo stage, the completion of Radahn's alchemical metamorphosis into a philosopher's stone. Have you ever noticed the pattern on the floor in the Divine Beast Dancing Lion arena? The same intricate pattern appears at the Gate of Divinity, where the player faces Prime Consort Radahn. This pattern seems to depict the creation of the Philosopher's Stone, beginning as a black flower, transitioning through white and or yellow hues, and culminating in a red flower, matching the color stages of alchemical transformation. Interestingly, General Radahn himself is adorned in all four colors during the battle in Caelid. While the red, yellow, and black tones are easy to spot, his tusk, white in color, completes the full set. This detail hints at a deliberate thematic connection, suggesting that Radahn was meant to be a philosopher's stone all along. I have often referred to Radahn as a divine beast dancing lion in my videos, and if Radahn embodies the philosopher's stone, it follows that the divine beast dancing lion may also hold this symbolic significance. Much like Radahn became a vessel for Miquella's spirit, the divine beast dancing lion serves as a conduit for a higher force. This concept reminds me of the Japanese animation Full Metal Alchemist, where Edward, the protagonist, is an alchemist whose design reflects the 4 key colors of the Philosopher's Stone's creation. So, why would Miquella go through such lengths to transform Radahn into a Philosopher's Stone? I believe the purpose was to purify himself or his spirit. According to alchemical tradition, the Philosopher's Stone possesses the power to refine gold, and Miquella has always been fixated on the purest of unalloyed gold. Miquella was born alloyed or tinted, much like his sister. This is reflected in his conversation with Radahn, which can be inferred from Radagon's rings of light, where Miquella abandons fundamentalism after realizing that it cannot cure millennia's rot. His rejection of fundamentalism marked the beginning of his quest for unalloyed gold. The demigods produced by Marika, Radahn, and Godfrey were mostly alloyed gold, meaning they carried flaws ranging from rot to stunted growth. This could explain why so many of them sought to divest themselves of their flesh, realizing that their bodies imposed limitations. It is possible that Marika permitted Radahn to wed Renala in an attempt to create a Philosopher's Stone capable of purifying her alloyed golden children, particularly Miquella and Godwyn. This theory raises the possibility that Rani was intended as a sacrifice to craft a Philosopher's Stone, transforming Godwyn into a god or being a higher consciousness. Perhaps the very definition of unalloyed gold. However, Rani refused to be used in this way, choosing instead to divest herself of her flesh, thereby denying Godwyn the chance at purification or godhood. Could this be why Marika was devastated by Godwyn's death? Do you remember our discussion about the Noks attempting to create a lord? The idea of creating a Philosopher's Stone aligns closely with their ambitions. According to alchemical texts, the Philosopher's Stone exists in 2 distinct forms, created through nearly identical methods. White used to purify silver, while red is used to purify gold. The white stone is considered a less matured version of the red stone. We have already examined Radahn, who embodies the red Philosopher's Stone, designed to purify gold, or Miquella. Now, let's take a closer look at the Night Lords the Noks attempted to create. Notice their white hair and pale bodies. This could indicate that they were white Philosopher's Stones. And what is the purpose of white Philosopher's Stone? To purify silver, an element linked to the moon. This suggests that the Noks were working to forge a Philosopher's Stone to usher in the return of a moon goddess. Yes, you heard that right, a goddess, because the moon is associated with feminine energy. Therefore, if a divine entity were linked to the moon, it would likely possess a feminine nature. But what about the soldier dragons of Nokron and Nokstella? I suspect they represent another attempt by the women of Nokron and Nokstella to create a lord, similar to Placidusax. After all, Placidusax was once a lord, and based on everything we've explored so far, a lord is essentially a philosopher's stone, meaning Placidus's may have been one as well. It's plausible that the women of Nokron first tried to create a human lord and failed. Desperate for success, they may have shifted focus to crafting a dragon lord, only to fail again. Perhaps they took extreme measures, pushing past all limits in their pursuit. The Philosopher's Stone has yet another name, known as Calculus albus, which has been associated with Calculus Candidus from Revelation 2:17, symbolizing divine radiance. This brings to mind the spirit Calculus, an item located throughout the land of shadow. This item plays a key role in the creation of the Sprites stone, an artifact inhabited by spirits. Notably, the Philosopher's Stone, especially in its form as Radahn, serves as a vessel for Miquella, who takes on a spiritual form upon returning from the gates of divinity. This connection between stones and spirits highlights their significance in alchemical practices amongst the ancient. The Philosopher's Stone is just the beginning of a broader collection of alchemical practices woven into the game's lore. Take for instance the jar ritual, the gruesome process carried out by the ancients on the shamans. What exactly were they trying to achieve through such inhumane methods? Before dismissing any alchemical connections to the jar ritual, I invite you to explore the nursing area in Shadowkeep, where the remains of the shamans, placed inside pots, can be found. Look closely at the aromatic bottles hanging from the ceiling. We have already discussed perfumers and their ties to alchemy, so it stands to reason that some form of alchemical experimentation was involved in the ritual. We will delve deeper into this subject in our Marika backstory video, but for now, let's focus on Radahn as a philosopher's stone, a revelation that raises several intriguing questions. Could Radahn have been a philosopher's stone as well? What about Godfrey? I'd love to hear your thoughts on these theories, so share your insights in the comments, and don't forget to check out other videos on this channel. See you in the next video.